It's Motivational Monday here, and the subject is 3 steps to overcome procrastination and laziness. Those who know me and who know the ultimate do, delegate or ditch system, you will not be surprised that the 3 steps are always clarity, confidence and change. But I want to put those in context of procrastination and laziness. And the reason I want to talk about that is because I have over the years of helping people do more of what they love and learn to love what they have to do. I am often hearing people, when they don't do what they say they're going to do, they will berate themselves, they will call themselves lazy, or they will say that they're procrastinating. And so the first thing, if you want to overcome something, is get real clarity of what do you mean by what you say, and checking out whether or not you being mean about it is actually working for you. So if you are saying, oh, I'm procrastinating or I'm being lazy, that's a story that you're telling yourself. And you have to work out what works about that, because if you don't work out what works about it, you will not let it go. You will not be prepared to change the story in order for it to serve you. So the first thing I want you to think about is procrastinating for you, or laziness for you, is like what? Now, whenever I've done this with a client, it's about pausing. It's about slowing things down. It's about not pushing so hard. And guess what? One of the 7 principles of motivative action is pause, rest, restore, recharge. So procrastination and laziness in itself is not a problem. It's usually how often and how long we spend in that space that we start to become critical of ourselves. So when you, first of all, just think about procrastination, what do you mean by what you say? And are you being mean to yourself or other people when you say it? And if you're being mean to yourself, you're being critical, now is the time to think about. So when you want to overcome procrastination and laziness, when you do overcome that, then what happens? We get to the outcome. What do you want? And so if what you want is to be productive, if you want to be proactive, if you want to be assertive, whatever the thing is that you want, that's the first thing to do, is get clarity of what do you mean by what you say. Find out what's the behavior you'd see that's procrastination or laziness. And when you weren't seeing that, what would you see? And so usually words that I hear is productive, effective, efficient, proactive, assertive, those sorts of things. But please, in the comments right now, if you were not being procrastinating and you weren't being lazy, what would you be? What would be the opposite? So the first step is to get clarity of what you mean by what you say. But also being curious about what is it that you mean, what is the actual thing you'll hear and see, what's the evidence you'll have that you'll be procrastinating or you're lazy, okay? And many of us will just think sometimes that when we're resting, that's lazy. So this morning, I'll put my hands up, I didn't get out of bed till about 20 to 9. Okay, I'm normally a 5 o'clock morning riser, but I was on it all day yesterday with the Make It Happen Marketing Manager Critic. I had done 6 or 7 networking events last week, and I had full events with my own clients, and I was doing some training for myself as well. So I had a lot of cognitive overload, lots of processing to do. And so I have purposely this week pulled my diary back. I've reduced my networking down to 3. I'm focusing on much more internal work, stuff I can do on my own, so some planning and strategy. And so I'm slowing the pace down. But I'm noticing already this morning that it feels a little bit uncomfortable because it's different from how I was doing it last week. But I also know that there was the warning signs of overwhelm last week, and therefore having this time out is really, really important. And I know it'll be the catalyst for pushing me forward in the weeks to come. So I want you to think about, first of all, clarity. If you are somebody who is criticizing themselves right now for being procrastinating or lazy, think about what do you actually hear and see when you're procrastinating and lazy. And then when you're not doing that, then what happens? And let's get some words and some language about what you would be doing, because the first thing we've got to do is change your focus to what you want rather than what you don't want. But all the time we're doing that, we're also just listening to that critic, because actually that critic has got some valuable information to gain from it, like evidence and the impact. Okay, so the second thing is confidence. Get confident about, so first of all, what works about procrastinating and what's lazy. And I haven't met a client yet that what happens is they recharge. Okay, so the same behavior, like laying in, you could call lazy, could equally be recharging, restoring and re-energizing. And so that was me this morning. I could have berated myself for being lazy, or I could just acknowledge that what was working for me was I was just allowing my system to, rather than be woke by an alarm, pushing myself to get up, I allowed myself to get up when I woke up today. So thinking about yourself in terms of what works about procrastinating and lazy, and then thinking about what would be working for you to be productive, efficient. Now, confidence comes when we understand what works about something, but it also about what's the process. Because if you are feeling lazy and procrastinating now and you want to become productive, there is going to be a series of actions, a series of either thoughts or things that you physically do or things you need to be to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. So if you think about, let's do procrastination to productivity, or laziness to laser focus, whatever you want to, whatever your thing is from and to, you write the words down. If you're online, share them with me and we can actually use your language. But to get confidence, you have to think about what works about procrastination, what works about productivity. So procrastination at its best is like what? Productivity at its best is like what? Because there are qualities about those things that absolutely work. And we can take the qualities with us without the criticism. So if what works about procrastination or laziness is that we get to rest, we can make sure in this process of productivity, when we're working on what happens between procrastination and productivity, we can make sure we build in some rest points. Because if we don't, we'll slip right back to procrastination, because it's part of the process. It's part of, if the thing that works about procrastination, it is going to be the thing that we need in our system. It's part of the process. So I want you to think about now for confidence, whatever you're criticizing yourself for, whether it's laziness or procrastination, what works about it? When you have productivity or efficiency, whatever the thing is you want to get instead, what works about that? And then the questions you need to be asking yourself is what happens in between? And start to think of what the steps are. Another question you can think about is, in order to be productive or effective, how do you need to be? And I will tell you now, I haven't asked very many people, though they haven't answered rested, restored, recharged. So just be careful about that criticism you're giving yourself, because what if it's the criticism of the resting and the restoring and putting the label of procrastination and lazy on it that's not serving you? So one, get clarity of what works about the procrastination and laziness, and then decide what you'd like to have happen instead. Focus your mind on what you want to have happen. Confidence comes from understanding what works about those things when they're at their best and what happens in between. And change happens when you've got the right support. So what kind of resource or support might you need in order to get from procrastinating to productivity? And it might be that you need your partner to understand you're going to get up later today. So I was very fortunate. My husband brought me my vitamins in bed at 7:30. I still had those on time, so I can still have my breakfast before my first meeting at 10 o'clock this morning. And I was ready still to do the video at 9 o'clock. I knew what was the plans, and I was able to communicate to people around me what was going on. But I also want you to think about changing the way that you give, receive, and invite feedback. Because if right now you saying to yourself or other people that you're lazy and you're procrastinating, if what it gets you is people going, oh no, you're lovely, you work really hard, or what can I do to help, you look really stressed, it may well be that you're going to get stuck in the drama triangle. Because when you play victim, and you come from a victim stance where your story that you're telling about procrastination is from this energy of I'm not right, I'm doing it wrong, what might be the payoff is the feedback you get is help. So you may need to change the way that you actually get the help that you want, the way that you ask for help. And it can be really challenging when it comes to overwhelm, because what I've discovered over the years is that when we actually get really clear about what kind of support and resource we need, often when we ask for help, the other person doesn't always hear it the way that we meant it, or we didn't get much clarity before we said it. Then we end up with more stuff to deal with, which then forces us to be in more overwhelmed. So then we want to go and hide away and procrastinate and be lazy. So here's the thing about this. Be aware that when you are, sometimes the support that you need is someone to listen to you so that you can settle your own system and get clarity and confidence of what works for you before you ask for help. Because otherwise, I mean, a good example for me, last week I was in overwhelm and I had to buy a Secret Santa present for somebody I didn't really know very well. And I put it into the group, my hub, and they offered me some support. And there was somebody that's really good at detail goes, you could do this, you could do this. And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds so much more complicated. Now, because of who I am, I was like, as soon as I got that feedback, I could feel it in my system. I thought, actually, I don't think I want to spend that much time doing the research. So I then made a decision what I was going to buy. I've bought it, I've ordered it, and I'm ready to go. And so it's not that information was really valid, because I was feeling like I ought to, that I was not doing enough to make the present as personal and as bespoke and as thoughtful as I could. When I got the feedback of the list of things I could do, I instantly knew in my system that I didn't want to give that much time to it. I didn't, with my priorities as it is at the moment, I wanted to do a thoughtful gift. So I've made a decision what thoughtful is for me, and I've done that. Now, what can happen when we're procrastinating, we're lazy, if we are berating ourselves and putting ourselves down, we can get an overwhelm of suggestions. People can go, what about this? Have you done this? You could do this. And actually that can really add to the weight, which then makes me want us to retreat and do more procrastinating and laziness than actually moving forward. So the question to ask yourself now is, when you've got clarity of what you want, and I'm just going to use the word productive because we haven't got any words coming in yet, but if you're watching on replays, please hashtag replay and tell me what you would, if you're criticize yourself for being lazy and procrastinating at the moment, what would you like, what would be happening if you weren't doing that? Put the words in, so get clarity of what would be happening, and that would be like what. Then confidence comes from understanding how you need to be and the process that gets you from where you are now to where you want to be. So questions like what happens in between. And then the last thing, the change happens when you're absolutely clear what kind of resource or support you need for you to be confident like that and for you to achieve that outcome that you want to achieve. So have a think about those things today. And what I find people get really, really stuck on is that they don't know what support they need, and so they go and talk to lots of people, and lots of people make suggestions, and then that adds to the overwhelm. So just be aware that sometimes the first level of support is actually questions and someone listening to you without adding their opinions, suggestions and ideas, so that you can get clarity of what kind of productive it is, so you can get clarity of what the process is. When you understand the process and you understand the actual thing that you want, then you can start to work out what's missing. And when you ask for help, you're specifically going to ask for the help with the thing that you want. And then when you ask for it and that feedback becomes like, oh my gosh, that's really difficult, then you have a choice. You go back, okay, so bearing that that's a lot of information, what would I like to have happen and how do I need to be? And this becomes the cycle that you can go through in order to overcome procrastination or laziness, or anything really that you're being critical of yourself about. If you are criticizing yourself for something, remember that when you do that, you take blood and oxygen from the neocortex part of the brain, you put your limbic system into fight, flight or freeze. It means you can't think with much clarity, you can't think with much confidence, because all the decisions are being made from a panic station where it's just instant, it's reactive. Whereas we have to get to that calmer place where we have be able to look at this from curiosity, and we can actually say, what would I like to have happen? How do I need to be? And what kind of resource or support do I need? So remember today that if you are struggling with procrastination or laziness, first of all, make sure you say what you mean what you say, and don't be mean when you say it. Look forward to hearing your results. Please put them in the bottom of the video, and we'll catch up again next week. Have a fantastic week. I'll see you next Monday.